Have you ever had that strange feeling of being alive, yet not truly present, as if there's a someone inside controlling everything, but no one's ever really seen them? Well, what if I told you that this someone might not even exist? Yes, it sounds absurd, but the craziest part is that you've spent your whole life believing in it, believing you were a name, a story, an identity. But what if all of that was just a well-told illusion? The truth can be unsettling. The self you think you are may just be a bundle of thoughts, conditioning, and memories, stuck together like repeated stickers in a torn-up album. And more, that same self-seeking clarity is often the very obstacle to it. Yet there's something behind this mental fog, something that's always been there, quietly watching you live. And when that's seen, everything changes. Instantly, deeply, irreversibly. If you made it here, it's because something in you knows there's too much going on inside your head and too little happening in your awareness. In this video, we won't hand you magical formulas or motivational quotes. We'll walk together, layer by layer, through the most convincing illusion of all, that there is a you in control of everything. And in the end, you might just discover you never needed to control anything at all. Shall we? There's a massive difference between what is and what the mind imagines it to be. It might seem subtle, but it's a chasm. The mind, loaded with conditioning, constantly spins stories and sticks labels on everything. Wu Hsin firmly points out, reality needs no interpretation. Truth is where it has always been, here now, in the silence between one thought and the next, before the mind can name or judge anything. How many times have you suffered over something that only existed in your head? A conversation that never happened, a fear that never materialized, a rejection that lived only in your thoughts. That's what happens when we mistake imagination for reality. A simple example, someone takes a while to reply to your message, and you already build an entire narrative. But what if none of it was real? What if it was just your mind, once again, seeking control? Letting go of false beliefs requires no fight, only a willingness to see more clearly. When you understand that words are merely sounds with assigned meanings, you begin to notice that even your judgments are fragile. The world doesn't need your interpretation to exist. Consciousness comes before any explanation. And when this is seen, not through logic, but through the heart, a type of freedom emerges that's hard to describe, but easy to recognize. The mind loves to argue, to object, to be right. But truth isn't competing for a trophy. It doesn't need your approval. Awareness needs no applause. It simply is. That's why it can only be recognized, never attained. Truth doesn't bow to personal logic. It reveals itself in presence, in the moment when the need to be right is dropped. The most transformative experience happens when you stop fighting what is happening. When something arises, a pain, an emotion, a loss, and you don't try to change or justify it, but simply witness it, that's when clarity begins to shine. For example, instead of saying, "This shouldn't be happening to me," try breathing deeply and saying, "This is happening, and I am here." It sounds simple, but this shift dissolves powerful inner conflicts. You are not something with an expiration date. You weren't born with the identity you think you have. That's a fantasy built over time. You are timeless, infinitely present, long before your thoughts about yourself. But the mind, afraid of losing control, insists on keeping you trapped in a narrative. And when that's seen, even for a brief instant, an inner space opens. And that space invites you to something even deeper. Most people arrive at the spiritual path asking, "What will I get from this?" But Wu Hsin flips the script. He says, you don't gain anything. You lose. You lose illusions, labels, certainties. And losing all that is a tremendous gift. Self-knowledge is not an accumulation. It's an emptying. True wisdom doesn't weigh you down. It sets you free. Unlearning requires more patience than learning. The mind wants shortcuts, formulas, results, but clarity doesn't bloom under pressure. Imagine trying to force a flower to bloom before its time. You'll only destroy it. In the same way, forcing understanding makes you go in circles. The only effective posture is presence, being there fully, while the old falls away. And it will fall away, as long as you don't keep rebuilding it every moment. From a young age, we learn the world through concepts, fixed ideas about what is right or wrong, beautiful or ugly, possible or impossible. But what if you threw all of that into the fire? A symbolic fire where judgments, opinions and certainties are burned. Drastic? Yes, but only then can reality be seen, without the filters of conditioning. Self-knowledge begins when you start doubting what you think you know. Most people think awakening is like climbing a mountain, but the truer image is descending to the root, layer by layer, down to the core where the self can't hide. And when discernment arrives, it doesn't come with fireworks or trumpets. It comes as absolute silence, a lucidity that can't be spoken, only lived. And it is that silence that calls you to the next step. When the illusion of separation dissolves, something that was always there begins to shine. Presence. There is no longer a need to define who you are, or the constant effort to differentiate yourself from others. This simplicity, which is not apathy but clarity, is what remains when identity collapses. And in that silent space, a new vision arises, so sharp that it redefines everything, without needing a single word. Many approach these teachings as if looking for a spiritual GPS. Show me the right way. But Wu Hsin offers something disconcerting. There is no direction because you never left where you needed to be. True teaching doesn't take you forward. It brings you back. There is no mountain to climb, only an illusion to dissolve. And that requires a kind of clarity the linear mind can't grasp. Awareness is already here. The problem isn't its absence, it's the excess noise that covers it. The first step to dissolving that noise is to stop resisting what is. You know that impulse to judge, reject, fix everything. When it stops, even for a second, a harmony arises, too quiet for the noisy ears of the mind. A good practice, ask yourself, what am I resisting right now? Name it, then let it go. On the ordinary level of experience, resistance to the present moment is what breeds tension, anxiety, anguish. The teaching is simple. Don't fight what's happening. Don't deny it. Don't argue with it. Don't fix it. Allow it. In that relaxation, something opens. And this opening brings a lucidity that doesn't come from effort. Truth begins to arise when the inner war ends. And curiously, what comes next is even deeper. The mind loves putting stamps of authorship on everything. I did this. I failed. I chose this. But as clarity deepens, a disconcerting realization begins to dawn. There is no someone behind events. Life is unfolding by itself, flowing through countless forms. Consciousness uses many bodies as instruments, but the conductor is always the same, invisible, silent, and absolutely present. Have you ever noticed how some decisions seem to come from elsewhere? How some moments seem to move on their own, as if something greater is pulling the strings? That something is nothing but awareness itself, operating beyond the ego. There is no you who chose to breathe just now, and yet you're breathing. And the most liberating part, if no individual is in control, there is no guilt. No pride, only flow. Suffering arises precisely from the attempt to keep this separate identity alive, the I that believes itself to be the center of everything. But this I is just a mental construct, a character trying to stand out on a stage where everyone is made of the same fabric. When identity is seen as illusion, detachment is born. And this detachment does not lead to apathy, but to a lightness that clears the way for something even more essential. The self is like a veil. It seems to protect, but in truth, it only conceals. From an early age, we are hypnotized into believing we are separate entities living in opposition to the world. But one insight cuts through this illusion. Separation is a misunderstanding. When you contemplate the source, that which comes before any identity, the self is revealed as just another object, not the real observer. Division dissolves, and what remains is unity. Every human is born twice, first from the mother's womb, then from the belief in being someone. It is this second birth that creates confusion. A child does not think of itself as a person until it is taught its name, its family, its obligations. From there, a limited identity is formed, a narrow mold that compresses the vastness of consciousness. But what if this mold was never necessary at all? Imagine, just for a moment, letting go of all the ideas you carry about yourself. It's not easy. The mind protests. But without those ideas, who am I? That's exactly the point. You are what remains when all those layers are stripped away. A practical exercise. Take pen and paper and write everything you believe about yourself. Your name, job, likes, fears. Then ask, which of these things existed when I was just a baby? The answer might surprise you. The mind wants security, a favorable position in life. What is best for me? It constantly asks. But the truth is, what is good today may be terrible tomorrow. The endless pursuit of advantage creates more tension, more comparison, more suffering. Think about it. How many times have you chased something believing it would bring peace, only to feel more restless once you got it? That's because peace is not found in things, but in the absence of needing anything at all. When concepts are set on fire, the world doesn't turn to chaos. It reveals itself. Life is then perceived as perfect, not because it meets your expectations, but because it simply is. And in this unfiltered gaze, without veils, without masks, something begins to ignite within. A clarity hotter than fire, more alive than any explanation. And it is within that flame that the next insight begins to form. Wu Hsin smiles when people talk about their plans, and rightly so. Any plan made by an illusory identity can only produce more illusion. When you accept that there is no control, that life does not follow mental scripts, a new clarity is born, a lightness. Illusion begins to dissolve, and in its place, something more natural, simpler, more real begins to reveal itself, and continues to do so in the next step. This is a question that doesn't demand an answer. It demands silence. At the core of being, a sharp insight arises. If you are not identified with any role, story, or label, what remains? The I is the central concept around which the illusion of identity spins. When this is questioned, the castle crumbles. And amidst the rubble, consciousness shines like pure gold beneath the cleared earth. Look at an orange tree. It doesn't study botany, take productivity courses, or set goals to bear fruit. It simply does. The sky doesn't worry about being blue. Nature unfolds, effortlessly. The same is true for clarity. It's not achieved through rigid practices or complex theories, but revealed when all that is artificial is removed. What is natural cannot be taught, it simply emerges. Have you ever noticed how many versions of you've already been? The you of childhood, the high school you, the one who once loved someone no longer present. All were real at some point, but where are they now? Gone. Like characters from a play whose stage has been dismantled. This shows that the I is impermanent, and what is impermanent cannot be the truth of what you are. What observes all these phases, however, remains untouched. The mind, on the other hand, is always trying to force flowering. How can I become enlightened, it asks, like someone trying to speed up a harvest by pulling on the plant's stem. But wisdom is patient. Simply sitting, without intention, without form, Without haste, the seed opens into fruit. A simple practice: take 10 minutes each day to just sit and observe. No phone, no music, no expectations, just be. That is the beginning of detachment. When the idea of identity is seen as construction, not essence, clarity emerges, not as a new concept, but as the removal of all concepts. You don't need to create a new image of yourself, just to see the falseness of the old ones. And in doing so, what's left is not emptiness, but space, a space that is alive, silent, and full, ready to carry you even deeper into the mystery that is about to be revealed. The mind asks, what is reality? The answer comes devastatingly simple: consciousness. Only consciousness. Everything that appears and disappears, forms, sensations, thoughts, and even the I, are just objects perceived within consciousness. And it's not something you have, it's what you are, before any name, memory, or desire. Without it, what remains? Nothing can be known without it. A practical example. Close your eyes for a moment. Notice the sounds around you, the air brushing your skin, your heartbeat. Now observe. You're not creating any of this. You're just perceiving. This silent and neutral perception is consciousness, the field where everything takes place. Self-knowledge begins not by trying to understand the world, but by recognizing this silent field where the world appears. Clarity isn't creating something new, but perceiving what's already present. The mind wants to understand, but understanding is the mind's job, and it always arrives late. It names what has already been lived. That's why thinking about consciousness is like trying to see the eye with the eye itself. Clarity only appears when thought ceases on its own, effortlessly. And in that naked space of silence, what arises is not void. It's life in its purest form. A portal opens, and it's calling you to step through. The mind is like a hyperactive child. The more attention you give, the more it stirs. The teaching is simple. Fighting thoughts is like wrestling with your own shadow. You only make it stronger. The key isn't to end the mind, but to see through it and what lies behind. Silence. A silence so deep it needs no explanation. Clarity is born there, not from thinking about life, but from being present with life. Imagine your mind as a party where annoying guests keep showing up. Thoughts about the past, worries about the future, judgments of self and others. They knock, asking for attention. What's proposed? Don't kick them out. Just don't serve them coffee. They only stay when you feed them with belief, ignore them, and they leave on their own. This, applied in daily life, changes everything. Instead of trying to force silence, try something more effective. Remove your identification with thoughts. See them as passing clouds, not commands to obey. A good exercise is, when noticing an intrusive thought, ask, who is thinking this? That pause alone creates space, and where there is space, there is freedom. And this freedom is the portal that leads to something even more subtle. Trying to grasp unity with the mind is like trying to embrace the ocean with your arms. It's like trying to drink through your ears, a nearly comic image, yet deeply accurate. The mind was built to measure, compare, and divide. But unity cannot be measured, for it has no beginning, middle, or end. It cannot be divided, for there is no other outside of it. Unity can only be recognized when the mind is set aside, like a book that has served its purpose. Men are distracted by the tree and forget the seed. Dazzled by words, they forget the silence from which they are born. Clarity does not come from effort, but from simplicity. And what is simple is almost always ignored by the mind that wants more. But when wanting stops, something is revealed, something so essential that in its presence all falseness begins to lose its grip, and perception opens to that which was never absent. Think about it. How many times have you stayed in a job, relationship, or routine just because you were used to it? The discomfort had become so familiar, it felt safe. But every discomfort is a request for attention. It's like an inner alarm saying, "Hey, there's something here you need to see." A helpful practice: observe what you tolerate daily just because it's convenient. Make a list, then ask yourself, does this still serve my consciousness or just my inertia? Everything that comes and goes is just appearance. Thoughts, emotions, social roles, even the body, all change, age, dissolve. But that which perceives it all remains untouched. Wu Hsin calls our attention to this invisible foundation, that which watches the birth and death of all phenomena without being altered by them. This is consciousness, the substance that doesn't change, doesn't age, doesn't pass. And it's not far from you. It is you. Paying attention to what you are, not to what you seem to be, is the key. But this requires courage. The courage to stop planning, to stop praying for outcomes, to stop searching for new labels, to even stop trying to understand. Because as long as you're trying to define who you are, you're moving away from the truth that needs no definition. And it's in that raw space, in that formless silence, that something begins to move toward the next recognition. Imagine a movie screen. Many films are projected on it, love scenes, tragedies, adventures, but the screen is never affected. It remains. The same happens with your consciousness. Pain comes, joy comes, fear comes, and they go. But there is something in you that never leaves. And when you begin to drink from this perception, from this elixir, as Wu Hsin calls it, life changes. Not because problems vanish, but because identification with them loses strength. This clarity belongs to no one. It doesn't say, "This is my understanding," because wherever there is ownership, there is ego. And ego is the mist between the gaze and the truth. It's like trying to clean a window with a dirty hand. The mind that wants to comprehend is often the very thing preventing comprehension. The way out is, paradoxically, the way back in. Attention so long focused outward must return to its source. A good place to start? In difficult moments, close your eyes and ask, who is perceiving this right now? Don't try to answer in words, just feel. This question doesn't give you a new belief, it dissolves the old ones. And in that clean space, a deeper level of clarity begins to reveal itself. Have you ever sincerely tried to find yourself? Searched for a solid, stable me amid your thoughts, memories, and sensations? Wu Hsin proposes a different kind of quest, one that ends in failure. Because when you look deeply within, all you find are ideas about yourself, and none of them are you. Light does not find darkness, it simply dissolves it. Likewise, what you truly are cannot be found as an object, because you are the field of perception itself. The origin cannot be perceived by one who believes they are someone. It's like trying to look directly into your own eyes without a mirror. When the eye disappears, what has always been there, silent, constant, unchanging, is revealed. The shadow needs substance, but the substance does not depend on the shadow. Consciousness is the only constant in the midst of forms that are born and die. It doesn't need to be attained, only recognized. The world only exists when there is someone to perceive it. But who is that someone? If they disappear in deep sleep and everything remains silent, what remains? This is not abstract philosophy. It's a practical investigation. And as you go deeper into this inquiry, something begins to quiet down. The mind loses strength, the questions fall away. And at the center of the silence, a new perception begins to whisper what the next topic is ready to unveil. The root of all external conflict, arguments between friends, family friction, wars between nations, begins within. Deep down, where the mind refuses to look. Wu Hsin guides us to understand that when everything is accepted with equanimity, A quietness arises that does not depend on circumstance, and when that stillness is established, the world around you stops seeming chaotic. Peace is not something you find, it's what appears when conflict ends. Pause for a moment and observe. How many times have you reacted to the world because of an unresolved inner wound? A criticism, a harsh glance, a comparison, and suddenly a storm erupts inside. But the world doesn't offend you. It only reflects what's already there. A useful practice. The next time something irritates you, ask, what is this revealing in me that has not yet been understood? That question alone is a step towards silence. The past is a memory, the future a hypothesis, and both are constantly fighting for your attention, but all that truly exists is this moment. When you recognize this, the weight dissolves. Why complain about the darkness when there's a candle beside the bed? Consciousness is that candle. It doesn't need to be lit, only for you to stop looking in the wrong direction. And maybe, by shifting your focus, something begins to glow within. Wu Hsin points out something both disturbing and liberating. He who is comfortable in his prison does not desire freedom, and because of that, no one can set him free. The attachment to what is familiar, even if painful, is one of the mind's greatest traps. Identity is like an old pair of sandals. They no longer protect your feet, but they're so familiar that you're afraid to take them off. Yet as long as you remain bound to the comfort of the known, there is no room for the new. The mind wants to see clearly, but it is the very obstacle. True clarity doesn't arise from personal effort or mental struggle. It arises when the one trying to understand disappears. Wu Hsin puts it precisely. There is no one to do it. Clarity is an impersonal happening, like the sunrise. You don't have to push the sun over the horizon. It simply appears when the sky is clear. A powerful experiment. Instead of trying to figure out a situation, stop everything for a minute. Just observe without intention, without labeling. It's in that kind of silence that truth tends to reveal itself. Many believe clarity is an achievement, but Wu Hsin firmly dismantles that idea. Clarity is not something acquired. It is what remains when everything non-essential is stripped away. Everything is removed: beliefs, judgments, memories, desires. And when there is nothing left to carry, then what has always been there reveals itself. And most surprising of all, even the you who thought you were on the journey disappears too. Humility is not something you possess. It appears when the someone disappears. Compassion likewise doesn't belong to an individual. It simply flows, like water from a spring. When the effort to be humble, compassionate, or conscious ceases, these states arise by themselves, effortlessly, because they were already there, waiting for the attempt to end. And when that end comes, a space opens to perceive what comes next. Ideas are filters. They distort the direct experience of life. One who is empty of ideas does not live less. He lives more. He feels the wind on his face, the aroma of the tea, the whistle of the kettle, all as sacred. Not because they are extraordinary, but because they are lived without mental commentary. A dog doesn't know it's a dog. It simply is. This doesn't make it inferior. It makes it free. If only man were so fortunate. Wu Hsin offers a rare provocation. Who dies when the body dies? What is it that fades away? Those who live as separate individuals inevitably vanish, but those who no longer see themselves as individuals, they live eternally. True immortality is not in continuing to exist as a someone, but in fully transcending the illusion of someone. Only those who let go of ownership over body and mind truly know freedom. The beauty of music isn't in the theory of scales, but in a single note played with presence. Hold that note too long, and the melody is lost. Consciousness works the same way. When you try to control it, it vanishes. But when you live in it, everything finds its natural rhythm. And it is in that rhythm, in that naturalness, that something begins to emerge. Something so subtle that it can only be understood if the next veil is lifted. Imagine a drop of water afraid to merge with the ocean, thinking it will cease to exist. But when it surrenders, it loses nothing. It becomes the whole. The same happens with consciousness when it abandons identity. A symbolic exercise. Close your eyes and say aloud, "I am so-and-so," and then go silent and feel. Now say only, "I am." Then, just remain. No name, no story. What remains is what you have always been. Wu Hsin is blunt. All art is born in the absence of the artist. Likewise, all suffering ends in the absence of someone who considers themselves the sufferer. The obstacle is not the world, nor circumstances. It is the idea of a me trying to control everything. When that notion of identity dissolves, like ice melting in warm water, what remains is freedom. Freedom from this and that, from right and wrong, from yes and no. A freedom that simply is. All that is needed is to invert the focus. Instead of seeing the world through yourself, see yourself through the world. It's a realignment. There's nowhere to go, because everything is already here. The goal is not to reach a spiritual destination, but to dissolve the one seeking goals. And when the seeker disappears, the sought reveals itself. But what comes next goes beyond anything that can be pursued. It's as if happiness were hidden beneath layers of clothing you've put on throughout life, garments of identity, ambition, past, and with each piece removed, your body breathes more freely. Until one day, you're naked, even of self, and there, egoless, you discover the only garment that has ever truly fit. Presence. A powerful exercise. Choose one day and say no to everything unnecessary. Observe what remains. That is clarity. The key to happiness lies in letting go of what was never yours. Dream, waking, awakening, all revolve like a great wheel. But the one who watches the wheel turn, without spinning with it, is the knower of all three states. When this knower is recognized, the great gate opens, not with fanfare, but with a whisper, and it whispers something you'll only hear if you are very still. Life is like a dance between opposites, light and shadow, sound and silence, full and empty. Wu Hsin states, "He who is unaffected by the flow is the one who has accepted it." The world is not the problem. Trying to control it is what creates suffering. When the rope is released and the flow is allowed, something shifts. The identity built for protection starts to collapse, and where effort once reigned, lightness begins to emerge. This is not escape, it's clarity. Take the example of the moth flying toward the flame. It's not the moth's fault, it is its nature. And the flame, it burns, because burning is its nature too. Life is like that. A game of functions where everything acts according to its role. The mind wants to label, control, moralize, but the wise one just observes. A simple practice. In moments of friction, silently repeat, "This is just life being life." That phrase alone can dissolve drama. The world, with all its highs and lows, doesn't need to be conquered, only seen as it is. Awakening requires no effort because it is spontaneous. It happens like a flower blooming or a star being born. When effort disappears, acceptance arises, and in that acceptance, a presence so deep emerges that it may reveal an entirely new dimension of consciousness, one that opens with the next step on the journey. How different the world becomes when the identified individual is absent. When the act of perceiving is understood, the boundaries between inside and outside disappear. There is no longer a me observing the world. There is only observation happening. Wu Hsin reminds us that trying to explain this is like describing color to someone born blind. That's why, instead of more words, he suggests, let stillness speak, and it does, but only in silence. Think about it, what can exist without you? Not your body or your history, but without this constant sense of a me in command. Try answering that honestly. You'll likely realize that all your problems are linked to that central figure, that someone always trying to fix life. But what if that someone is just a thought? A useful exercise is to watch the moment you say, I am angry. Pause, ask, who exactly is angry? Follow the thread. Maybe you'll find no one. A good exercise? When you feel overwhelmed, ask yourself, who is tired? Investigate without rush. Perhaps in finding this who, you'll realize they were never really there, and that prepares you for the next break in illusion. To go beyond the skin, the boundary of the body, and beyond thought, the boundary of the mind, is to enter a vastness with no name. And in that vastness, all problems lose reference, like waves vanishing into the sea. This is the beginning of a new way of living, and this new way only reveals itself to those willing to look where they've never dared. And that deeper gaze prepares you for what's next. Wu Hsin offers a powerful key in few words. Recognizing illusions as illusions is already the beginning of liberation. The problem is not being deluded. It is believing the illusion is real. It's like searching for a grain of rice in a haystack. And worse, searching in the wrong pile. Most are looking outward for what can only be seen within. And as long as attention is directed outward, clarity will remain hidden. Wu Hsin masterfully summarizes the 3 secrets of freedom. The past cannot be improved, the future cannot be shaped, and nothing, absolutely nothing, can be controlled. So what remains? This moment. Only it is real, only it is eternal. But the mind insists on seeking outside what can only be found within. As long as we live chasing control, we live in captivity, even if it's a golden cell. If your quest is for liberation, the honest question is, liberation from what? Wu Hsin's answer is direct, from the pain of being an individual, because being a someone requires constant effort, maintaining an image, sustaining a story, defending a mental territory. But when you let go of little, you gain little. When you let go of much, you gain much. And when you let go of everything, everything is revealed. And the curious thing is that nothing new appears, only what always was. Think of the times you tried to change something that had already happened. You replay the scene in your mind, argue with it, wish it had been different, but that's like trying to draw on water. The same applies to the future. Anxiety is the attempt to control what doesn't yet exist. Wu Hsin proposes something radical: accept the moment as it is, not as resignation, but as clarity. And in that acceptance lies a liberation no achievement can offer. Life pulses, events unfold, but there is no one to whom this is happening. What remains is silence. And in that silence, an inner eye opens. It doesn't see with physical eyes, but with presence. And what does it see? The unchanging foundation behind all appearances, a type of lucidity that cannot be explained, only lived. And it begins to shine even more brightly when the next point is touched. Beneath the rock of personal identification, there's always darkness. No matter how bright the sun is outside, if you're still hiding underneath, nothing changes. Seeing clearly is simply stepping out from under that rock. And once you step out, everything changes. Because the whole isn't made of parts. It's made of the recognition that the parts never existed. And touching that recognition reveals something even deeper. Life only gets complicated when we believe too much in the story we tell about ourselves. Wu Hsin goes straight to the point. You cannot exist without illusion. Being you is the illusion itself. Harsh, isn't it? But think about it. This you, who thinks, calculates, compares, is just a fragile construction maintained by recurring thoughts. When those thoughts stop, even for a second, the you vanishes too. And what remains is something vast, silent, real. True contact with life only happens when there is no longer a person in the middle, no personality filtering, no individual interpreting. It's like stepping out of a theater and for the first time seeing the real sky without artificial lighting. For perception to bloom, no new practices or techniques are needed. What matters is what you stop doing. Stop seeking recognition, trying to be special, trying to be someone. And in that stopping, everything begins to happen on its own. To come from a vast nothing and try to become a small something is the height of madness. But that's what the mind does constantly, defines, limits, labels. And in doing so, it loses touch with life's mystery. The return to the natural state begins precisely when you give up being something. And in that surrender, a new presence begins to emerge. And it prepares to manifest even more subtly in what comes next. Spontaneity is the essence of real life. Wu Hsin reminds us that to truly live leaves no room for thought. The mind works through repetition, through attempts to control. But life, real life, happens in improvisation, in the now, in the instant, when there's no time to rationalize. True silence is not created by effort. It happens when the someone trying to be silent simply vanishes. And then everything dissolves, including suffering. This stillness is not passive, but an active solvent. It's like pure water that dissolves all conditioning. Picture a moment when you were so present you forgot yourself. A deep conversation, a sunset, uncontrollable laughter. In that instant, there was no effort, no ego, only the living experience. That's the natural state, and it's closer than you think. The challenge is only to stop thinking. All the problems you know have one thing in common. Their creator is you. But not you in the sense of your essence, rather that mental image of a someone trying to control everything. Remove that creator, even just for a moment, and watch what happens to the problems. Shi, in his quest for wisdom, heard the same phrase from 3 different masters. You are the screen on which everything appears and disappears. The repetition wasn't redundancy, it was depth. The mind hears something once and wants to move on. But wisdom isn't about accumulation, it's about absorption. You are the screen, not the images that pass. Everything you call my life is projection. Consciousness is the silent, eternal backdrop behind all these forms. Imagine your thoughts as clouds, some dense, others light. Now imagine that the sky is you. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. The fool tries to shape the clouds. The wise one anchors himself in the sky. To access this peace, you don't need to become a monk or retreat to the mountains. It's possible anywhere. Just observe the thought and don't follow it. That's simple. Have you noticed how many identities you've had? The you from 10 years ago was a different person with different tastes, beliefs, and desires. So the inevitable question arises, who is this you now, and how long will it last? The answer may be uncomfortable, but it's liberating. This identity will also pass. And beneath it lies something that has never changed, even as everything around it has. That is your true identity, silent, stable, eternal. Beliefs, no matter how sophisticated, are like walls, fortresses built to protect, but that end up imprisoning you. As long as the wall stands, there's no way to see the other side. And what's on the other side? Nothing that can be named, because silence needs no label, and it's this silence, this formless absence, that prepares the ground for the next unveiling. The known is supported by the unknown, and the unknown by the unknowable. The mind hates this, it wants control, but consciousness doesn't care for control. It simply is. Ignoring this foundation is humanity's madness. When you stop trying to understand and simply recognize, something descends from the top of the mind and anchors in the heart. And that's where the next recognition begins to make sense. All pain, all restlessness, all problems arise from one common source, the presence of the I. Wu Hsin shows that in the absence of the person, peace doesn't need to be sought. It simply is. It's not about eliminating the body or silencing the mind by force. It's about recognizing that the real creator of problems is the idea of being someone separate. When this identity vanishes, even thoughts lose their grip, and in the absence of noise, silence makes itself heard. How many times have you tried to understand your inner chaos by diving deeper into it? Wu Hsin brings a simple but forgotten truth. You don't need to analyze darkness to dissolve it. You just need to turn on the light. And the light is clarity. The problem is that the mind insists on understanding, fixing, explaining, as if there's something broken. But clarity doesn't fix. It dissolves. It reveals that, in truth, there was no problem. Only identification with an illusion. Everything that can be acquired can also be lost. Your achievements, your certainties, your titles. What is permanent cannot be obtained, because it is already present here and now. Realignment with this truth means abandoning the search and realizing that what you were looking for was always there. A useful exercise. When you feel anxious or doubtful, ask, what am I trying to obtain that isn't already here now? That simple question has the power to dismantle the entire inner drama. The crow caws, the grass grows, the rain falls. None of it requires effort or control. So why should the I be any different? The desire to get somewhere creates the illusion of time and the prison of ego. When that illusion fades, all that exists is this single moment, the now. And in this now, bare and silent, the next insight begins to rise, like a breeze arriving without warning. Wu Hsin says, when clarity is present, there are never any problems. When it is absent, problems sprout like mushrooms after the rain. But look closely. It's not that the problems vanish, it's that the someone who had them is no longer in control. When understanding is complete, there's nothing more to do, only to observe. Like a silent witness. Consciousness simply sees, without judging, without altering, without trying to interfere. It's like being in a restaurant. Wu Hsin's words don't feed you, they only point the way. Talking about wisdom is not being wise, just as reading the menu doesn't satisfy hunger. The solution to problems doesn't lie in words, but in honestly asking, who is having this problem? The only one who can tear down the wall is the one who built it, and that one, when seen with clarity, is revealed to be made of air. Every day, become at least 1 gram lighter, not through effort or self-demand, but by letting go of the unnecessary, a habit, an idea, a need for recognition. Consciousness expands when the weight of identity dissolves, and when that weight lifts, life begins to flow with a naturalness that sets the stage for the next plunge. Wu Hsin puts it precisely. The wise man is not the one who knows much, but the one who perceives the uselessness in everything. Knowledge can be useful, but wisdom sees beyond utility. The mind seeks tools, tricks, formulas, but the heart of consciousness recognizes the unity behind the multiplicity. Seeing utility as knowledge, seeing the uselessness of it all, that is wisdom, because only then does real detachment arise. Imagine a fish searching for the ocean. It may swim everywhere, but it will never find it because it's already inside it. That's the spiritual search. As long as you seek the self as something external, it will remain hidden. A good exercise? When the desire to get there arises, ask, who wants to get there? That pause breaks the illusion of separation and reveals that the ocean of consciousness never left. The observer spends life in conflict with what is observed until both dissolve into pure observation. It's in that state, where observer and object merge, that everything resolves without anything needing to be done. When there are no others, there's no longer anyone to create suffering. And when this is clearly seen, the mind no longer finds a reason to continue fabricating conflict. The next point begins exactly when the creator of illusion runs out of breath. Wu Hsin dismantles a common idea. We think silence is what happens when everything stops making noise. But true silence is not the absence of sound. It's the absence of someone listening in order to interpret. When the I disappears, what remains is not emptiness but fullness. There's no more noise of judgment, comparison, interpretation. There is only what is. And this purity is so dense, so alive, that it needs no explanation. What cannot be known also cannot be separated. It can only be found when there is neither presence nor absence, only being. Wu Hsin invites us to recognize the inner fire, a fire that, once lit, boils the water of the mind, evaporates thoughts, and reveals what lies beneath. But beware, if there is still a someone wanting to become enlightened, absolute understanding slips away like mist, and this prepares us for the final revelation. Imagine a cup. If it's full of mud, you can try to pour tea in it, but nothing happens. The only solution is to empty it. The mind is the same, full of ideas, judgments, absolute truths. For clarity to arise, it must be emptied, not filled with more beliefs. A practical exercise: choose a fixed thought, something you strongly defend. Now ask, what if this weren't true? Just watch what stirs within. This is the beginning of deep unlearning. This presence does not need to be reached because it was never lost. What gets lost is only the temporary perception of it, clouded by thoughts, desires, stories. The path, then, is not a going toward, but a coming back from. Coming back from distraction, from noise, from haste. My words don't matter, says Wu Hsin. The real invitation is to hear what lies beyond them. The perception of what is can only arise with the elimination of obstacles, and the biggest one is the belief that something more is needed. Don't add. Empty. Only when even emptiness is emptied does fullness manifest. And when it shows itself, everything that once seemed important loses its color. You are as incomprehensible as space. Trying to define yourself is like trying to grasp the wind with your hands. Wu Hsin reminds us that presence is not a state, it's the foundation, the silent background where all experiences arise and disappear. To recognize this is like remembering something that was never forgotten, just covered. Right here, right now. Consciousness is already shining, waiting only for the veil of identity to be lifted. Wu Hsin invites us to strip off identity as if removing a tight-fitting garment. This second skin, the I we build to protect ourselves, seems necessary, but in truth, it only separates us from the infinite. It's like a shield that, instead of defending, imprisons us. When it's removed, what remains is not vulnerability, but freedom. What's left is a void so true that it needs no name, role, or recognition. Wu Hsin concludes with precision. You are this, but not a this that can be described. A this that can only be lived. A this that has always been present, even before you thought you were someone. It is the screen on which everything appears. It is the silence in which everything dissolves. And now that the journey of deconstruction has reached its end, it's time to begin a new cycle with a fresh introduction. There's no need to fight the mind or overcome it. Just see through it. Just as you don't need to break a mirror to know it's reflecting, you only need to recognize the reflection. An exercise. When the impulse to defend yourself arises, ask, who is feeling threatened right now? Just observe. Most of the time, who answers is a mask, not the real consciousness, and once seen, the mask begins to fall on its own. A powerful exercise? Throughout the day, pause for 30 seconds. Feel your feet on the ground. Listen to the sounds around you. Breathe. This is being. This is consciousness. What are you waiting for to take that step? If this content sparked something in you, a doubt, a fire, a longing to go deeper, then subscribe to the channel, activate notifications, and come with me on this journey. Here, we don't teach you how to be someone better. We invite you to discover who you are when you stop trying to be anyone. When true emptiness is encountered face to face, everything once believed dissolves. There's nothing more to achieve because there's no longer an achiever. The notion of individual vanishes like ice in warm water. And then everything is perceived as part of the whole. Nothing is separate, nothing is outside. And in this sea of non-duality, something new begins to emerge. Something that will be touched in the next point. After all this, tell me, who are you? Without your name, without your memories, without the labels the world gave you. The answer might not come in words, but it comes in silence. It comes in presence. And the lingering question is, are you willing to let go of the self you invented to finally discover what you've always been? Freedom is not about gaining wings. It's about untying the knots. Wu Hsin shows us that the true flight begins when even the idea of who is flying is lost. Clarity doesn't need to be sought hastily. It's already here. It's the veils of thought that obscure it. Eternity is not a distant place. It is this instant right now. But to see it, one must let go of the concern with time, with the I, with goals. Life no longer needs to be a string of attempts to become someone. Clarity is already here, waiting behind every thought you choose not to follow. So tell me, what will you do with all of this now? Will you keep clinging to the illusion of control, or will you truly dive into this consciousness that witnesses everything? Everything that rises, falls. Just as waves form and return to the sea, the I is born, grows, and one day vanishes. The wise one recognizes this and thus doesn't cling. He doesn't have all the answers. In fact, he no longer has any questions, because everything moves on the surface of stillness, and it is there that true trust blooms. Trust that what brought you here also knows where to take you. In the womb, you didn't need to do anything. Nature took care of everything. Now, the mind insists on interfering, controlling, overthinking. Wu Hsin proposes, reject thinking and not thinking, just be. This is the naturalness in which the particular dissolves into the universal. A ball without seams, without beginning or end, a presence that always was, even when you thought you weren't. And in that recognition, the final veil begins to lift. Wu Hsin delivers a truth that can shake foundations. The greatest crime is neglecting who you truly are in order to believe in the story of who you think you are. The personal drama is like a cloud covering the sun of consciousness. And as long as you're trapped in the script, your fears, achievements, failures, you're asleep. The dream lasts only as long as the dreamer. When the someone who dreams disappears, reality awakens. In unity, all is being. There is no one who sees nor what is seen. There is only seeing. This is the experience that cannot be thought, only lived. A good exercise? When immersed in intense emotion, close your eyes and say, "This is happening, and I am the screen on which this appears." Just observe. This detachment is not escape, it's clarity. And this clarity allows you to see that what you really are was never involved in the drama.